Don't spray that. Please, don't. The words rang out like a gunshot in the quiet chambers of Atlanta City Hall. A bottle of perfume slipped from a hand, shattered against the marble floor. No one could process what just happened, except one woman, Camilla Monroe, a 62-year-old black janitor once mocked as the storage room rat. She knew exactly what was going on. And she knew this. If she didn't speak up today, the mayor wouldn't wake up tomorrow. This wasn't a random poisoning. This was an assassination plot, wrapped in scent and sealed with handshakes under soft lights. And in the very halls where power hides behind suits and designer cologne, a woman the system discarded will make an entire city open its eyes. If you're drawn to real stories of injustice, of black voices erased from the spotlight, of quiet heroes who shift the entire narrative, hit subscribe. Because the people the world sees as insignificant are sometimes the only ones standing between life and death. Don't spray that. Please, don't. The voice didn't rise, but it stopped the room cold. A second later, the mayor of Atlanta dropped the perfume bottle. It hit the marble floor. Shattered. Lavender filled the air, soft, elegant. But to the woman who had just spoken, it smelled like death. Her name was Camilla Monroe, 62 years old, janitor. For 15 years, she had quietly swept the halls of city power. No one knew her past. No one cared that she'd once been a state court clerk. Before being demoted in an internal takedown, she never had the chance to defend herself against the storage room rat. Someone once called her that. In the very room where she had just saved a mayor's life. Day after day, Camilla moved through spaces where power changed hands. She heard more than people thought and remembered the things others wanted to forget. That afternoon, she couldn't stay silent anymore because she knew if the mayor sprayed that perfume, there would be no second chance to doubt it. This wasn't just about a bottle of perfume. It was a plot wrapped in fragrance and stopped by the one woman the entire system had chosen not to see. Atlanta City Hall, where every decision made could reshape the lives of millions. From the outside, it stood as a symbol of transparency and democracy. But inside, Camilla Monroe knew better. It was a grand stage, where promises were painted in lipstick and truth was often wiped clean. Camilla had once been part of that system. A sharp-minded, principled state court clerk. Proud, precise, unshakable. Until a report she didn't write was pinned to her name. An investigation rushed to a close. An apology that never came. And she, the woman who once walked the red carpet of justice, now scrubbed the footprints of those who sat in the chairs she once served. 15 years. Not a single person ever asked who she used to be. On the other side of the power scale stood Mayor Madeline DeWitt, white, polished, hailed by the press as the clean hands in a dirty city. But Camilla knew Madeline wasn't evil. Just too busy curating her image to look down. And that blindness made her vulnerable to the man lying next to her every night. Victor Langston. A businessman with charm on the surface and a predator beneath it, bred from the pharmaceutical underworld. He smiled politely at everyone, except Camilla. To him, she was invisible. Worse, inconvenient, unnecessary beneath him. I don't want someone like you around my personal belongings. That's what Victor said the last time he spoke to her. What he didn't know was that she was the one clearing the path for the truth to walk in. Someone like her gets to walk into the mayor's office? That's a national security threat. Victor Langston. He said it on a Wednesday afternoon. Sunlight slanted across the third-floor hallway. Camilla was wiping down the windows. Madeline stood by the door. She didn't respond, just gave a soft, closed-lipped smile. Polite. Detached. Camilla didn't turn around. Didn't say a word. But she heard every syllable. And she didn't forget. People think the deepest wounds come from violence. But Camilla knew, sometimes pain lives in the things no one bothers to correct. That sentence didn't break her. But it etched something in her. To men like Victor, she was never a person. Just an ink blot that didn't belong in the painting of power. A few days later, Camilla started noticing. There was a perfume bottle on Madeline's desk. Unopened. No label. No barcode. Not commercially made. She had been a court clerk. She knew the truth always hid in the smallest details. Then she saw Victor enter his wife's office, carrying a small box. When he left, his hands were empty. And the perfume had been moved. No one else saw anything. But Camilla did. Because the eyes of someone pushed outside the system are the kind that no longer believe in coincidence. That was the first moment she realized the silence of death could carry a scent. Camilla wasn't a detective. She didn't wear a badge, had no access to records, no one backing her. But she had the eyes of someone who once stood in court and was shoved to the bottom before she ever got to speak. And those eyes had started to see what everyone else missed. One Monday morning, while emptying the trash in the mayor's private meeting room, Camilla found a discarded perfume bottle. Frosted glass. No label. Etched into the side, barely visible, 4M. But the engraving wasn't Madeline's style. Camilla knew that. Because someone who had once clerked for judges could tell the difference between affection and calculation in a single line. She picked it up, turned it slowly in her hand. A chill slid down her spine. Not because of the object itself, but because of the intent behind it. At the same time, a pattern began to shift from habit to threat. Victor brought his wife special juice every week. Camilla had seen him pour something into the glass. She'd assumed it was vitamins. But now, after that bottle, everything felt suspect. Sometimes the truth doesn't show up in the spotlight. It hides in what people throw away, thinking no one's small enough to pick it up. Camilla didn't know exactly what was happening. But she knew one thing. This was no longer coincidence. Camilla knew exactly where she stood. She had no right to speak. No seat at the table. No one would listen if she stepped forward and pointed at the truth. So she chose her own way. Quiet, careful, the same way she'd existed for the past 15 years. One early morning, while cleaning the mayor's private restroom, Camilla slipped a small piece of paper into the core of the toilet roll. The handwriting was shaky but clear. Watch the man who brings water. He doesn't just starve love, he poisons it. No name. No address. Just a warning. Vague, cryptic, like sad poetry on a rainy afternoon. When Madeline stumbled upon it by accident, she let out a laugh. Half surprised, half amused. Someone trying to scare her? Her, the woman who climbed to the top of city politics without ever flinching? No, impossible. Madeline dismissed the note, the way one dismisses a strange breeze. But 3 days later, in the middle of a federal budget meeting, she collapsed over the table. Doctors found nothing. No allergic reaction, no toxin, no trauma, just a body that disconnected, as if something inside had quietly crossed a line. And in the blurred silence of the hospital room, she began to wonder, was that note really just a joke? Madeline wasn't someone easily shaken. She was used to control. Controlling the narrative, controlling her emotion, controlling the media, and herself. But after the unexplained collapse, a tiny fracture began to spread through the cold glass she'd built around herself. And when government doctors gave her no answers, Madeline quietly hired a private expert, an old friend from her days in forensic science. 3 days later, the results arrived. No fanfare. No drama. Just one sentence that chilled her down to the bone. There are traces of a mild sedative compound. If accumulated over time, it could lead to chronic respiratory failure. But the dosage was subtle, expertly hidden. She folded the paper gently, as if afraid she might tear something that was already on the verge of breaking. Madeline returned to her office and sat in silence for hours, just watching Victor. That man, her husband, still wore the same charming smile, Still brushed her shoulder with feather-light touches. Still placed her morning orange juice exactly where she liked it. Too perfect. Too precise. Too much. She tried tracking him, but Victor wasn't careless. Tightly kept schedule. Two-step phone encryption. Bank accounts under no shared names. Not a single crack. But it was the smoothness itself, the flawless flow of his life, that revealed the truth. Something was being hidden. And Madeline began to understand. The person who can slowly kill you isn't the one who screams. It's the one who hands you orange juice every morning and says, I just want you to relax a little more. Camilla didn't have to look. Sometimes the truth reveals itself, right when people think no one's watching. That afternoon, she was cleaning the ground floor windows of the administrative wing when a black BMW pulled into a shadowed corner near the VIP parking lot. From where she stood, the glass reflected like a dull screen, but clear enough to see Victor Langston kissing a young woman, brown skin, long curly hair grazing her shoulders. Camilla squinted. She recognized her. Janelle, the new communications aide, hired just 3 months ago. Smart, sharp, silver-tongued. And now, the secret lover of the mayor's husband. They weren't hiding. Weren't afraid of being seen. Because to them it was simple. Who would believe the word of a janitor behind a dirty window? But Camilla didn't just watch. She took a photo, saved it, and waited. At the same time, Madeline, now consumed by suspicion, quietly checked Victor's phone one morning when he left it behind. A string of messages flashed on the screen. Colder than the toxicology report. Once she's dead, you'll be the first lady. You picked the perfume, right? Underneath it, a smiling face emoji. No exclamation marks. No urgency. Just the calm confidence of two people planning a funeral by fragrance. Their 17th wedding anniversary. Madeline had always believed that number meant resilience. Not round, not perfect, but strong enough to survive. That morning, Victor appeared with a velvet-wrapped gift box. Inside was a perfume bottle, delicately crafted, shaped like a teardrop, made of pale gold glass, engraved in soft script, nightshade gold. I know you've been tired lately, Victor said, his voice gentle enough to sting. You need a scent that makes everything disappear. Madeline smiled, lightly. She lifted the bottle, brought it to her wrist. And just as the cap popped open, the door burst wide. Camilla stormed in, breath ragged, eyes blazing like fire. Don't! I know what he put in that. Everything froze, like a still frame from a film. Victor didn't flinch. His eyes flickered, not from fear, but because he knew. The mask had finally slipped. Madeline turned her head, and in the very next second, the perfume bottle slid from her hand, shattered against the cold stone floor. A rush of thick lavender filled the room, laced with a faint metallic sting, the kind only those who've smelled death would recognize. And in that chamber of power, it wasn't a badge or a title or a press release. It was the woman they called the storage room rat, who stopped a powerful woman from taking one more step toward the grave. After the sound of glass shattering in the mayor's office, no one could pretend not to see anymore. Madeline stayed silent. Victor disappeared. No shouting. No storming out. Just a suspicious absence after a script was torn apart. But a man like Victor Langston never surrenders by walking away. He doesn't flip tables. He erases traces. And erases the people who carry the truth. Just 3 days later, Camilla felt it. Someone was watching her. A black car parked quietly behind the employee lot. A man in a baseball cap, hands in his coat pockets, standing by an electrical post, like he was waiting for wind. Camilla didn't panic. She'd survived a political takedown, buried a husband because of the system, been dismissed until she was nearly invisible. But she knew. Right now, she wasn't a shadow anymore. She had done the one thing they feared most. She had seen. That night, as she left the building, he made his move. Quick. No words. A blow to the back of the neck. Camilla collapsed onto cold concrete, blood pooling at the corner of her mouth. As her vision blurred, one thought flickered through her mind. This is the price of not staying silent. But what Victor didn't know was, just around the edge of the parking lot, there was a newly installed public camera, put there 6 years ago, because of Camilla's own recommendation. And this time, it captured everything. The face of the darkness. The truth doesn't die. It just lies still for a while, before it is broadcast. Camilla woke up in the hospital, her head wrapped in bandages, a fractured shoulder. The doctor told her she was lucky. But Camilla didn't believe in luck. This is destiny. The destiny of those who were once silenced, but never forgot how to listen. A few days later, in a private meeting with Madeline, no secretary, no bodyguards, Camilla reached into her coat and pulled out a small USB drive. She handed it over with both hands. Her voice was hoarse but steady. I didn't just see, I heard. And I kept it. It was an audio recording, captured on an old recorder, hidden inside her janitor cart, inside the men's restroom VIP wing, the place where Victor once thought no one would ever be close enough to witness. In the clip, his voice was deep, cold, like water from a well. She'll inhale it. Then it's obituary time. The mayor's seat will be vacant. You'll take it. Then came a woman's voice. Light, playful, a soft giggle. Nightshade gold. I picked it. Smells like a beginning. Madeline sat frozen. Her hands clenched in silence. Not because she was shocked, but because now she couldn't not believe anymore. And for Camilla, that moment wasn't just about handing over evidence. It was, at last, proof that the one who had been stripped of her voice could still be the one who saves a life. 3 days later, in the main chamber of Atlanta City Hall, the city council called an emergency session. The media showed up in full force. Red lights blinked on across camera crews. Everyone expected a policy announcement. No one expected what they were about to hear, a public accusation from the mayor herself. Madeline stepped forward. No slogan, no flashy blazer, just a steady gaze and a voice no longer guarded. I used to think the enemy of a politician was opposition. But no, it's complacency. It's believing you're too smart to be betrayed. She played the recording, released the toxicology report, and unveiled a chain of documents that Camilla had quietly preserved, like a life lived in silence, waiting for the day truth would finally have an audience. The press didn't speak. No one in the room moved. Only the federal agents stepped forward and placed cuffs on Victor Langston, charged with attempted murder, fraud, manipulating medical data, and corruption in pharmaceutical bidding. Janelle, the woman who once whispered, "I'll be the first lady," had fled in the night. The FBI issued a nationwide warrant. And in one rare moment, Atlanta stopped talking about who Camilla used to be and started asking, if she hadn't walked into that room, who would have stopped a death measured in perfume? The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Mayor Madeline DeWitt survives assassination plot by husband. Atlanta's power woman narrowly escapes death. Nightshade gold, the perfume that nearly killed a city's democracy. The press loves a story with victims and villains. They love bold faces, good lighting, sharp one-liners. But Camilla, no one mentioned her. Not a line. Not a single official thank you. No one knew that without the 62-year-old woman once called the storage room rat, there would have been no mayor alive to give a speech. But Madeline knew. And on the day the city held a ceremony to mark the resurrection of justice, she did the only thing that could begin to redeem her silence. She invited Camilla to the stage. Camilla walked slowly, her hands still slightly trembling, wearing her same hand-washed uniform. But when she took the mic, her voice didn't tremble at all. You don't need a seat on the council to know the truth. We, the ones you treat like trash, we live among you. And we remember. Very clearly. The room went completely still. not from shock, but because everyone knew they had just heard something no one could ignore anymore. After Camilla's speech, the people who once avoided her now bowed their heads, not because of her fame, but because they saw themselves in her silence, in all the moments they had wanted to speak, but chose instead to look away. Madeline, driven by a need to redeem at least part of the system's neglect, established a new unit within City Hall. It was called Ground Floor Listening, an organization made up of security guards, custodians, drivers, cafeteria staff. The people once labeled not part of the system, now they were the official eyes and ears of internal justice. A place where abuses of power would finally have a door to knock on. No one questioned who should lead it. All eyes turned to Camilla. Madeline called her into the office. For the first time, with no distance in her gaze, "I want you to lead this, because you saw what no one else did." Camilla smiled, softly, like a breath. No anger. No dramatic rejection. Just one sentence. That silenced the entire room, as if truth itself needed space to echo. "I'll still sweep the floors, because from down here, I see the truth best." No one said a word after that, because they understood some people don't need a title to make change. They just need to be left alone, with open eyes and ears that know how to listen. Atlanta City Hall lit up once again, but this time not to conceal, to illuminate the corners long forgotten. Camilla Monroe was still there, every morning, every afternoon, silently pushing her broom down the marble corridors. She was no longer invisible. And yet, she didn't become a spokesperson, a leader, or a media hero. She remained who she always was, a 62-year-old black woman wearing a worn uniform, in shoes with faded heels, who once stopped a murder plot with nothing but her hearing, her instinct, and her honesty. In the same hallway where Victor once said, "It's frightening someone like you can walk into the mayor's office." Now people stopped to greet her with eyes full of gratitude. No bronze statue was erected. None needed. Because what Camilla did didn't need to be carved into stone. It had already been carved into conscience. And if anyone asked what the greatest lesson of this entire case was, Madeline would simply nod, look toward the woman across the hall, and say, "Never assume silence has no eyes." And never underestimate the woman holding the broom, because she might be the one holding the life of an entire city. When this story ends, you might forget the mayor's name. You might even forget the traitors. But I believe you won't forget Camilla Monroe. A black woman once seated behind the bench as a court clerk, then pushed into the basement of society, but who never lost her eyes to see or the heart to hold on to the truth. She didn't ask to be honored. She didn't need to be called a hero. She only needed to be seen, and when it mattered most, to be heard. The lesson here isn't just about conspiracy. It's about how an entire system can go blind, simply because it never believed that someone at the bottom might have something to say. So if you've ever felt overlooked, silenced in a meeting, a family, a world that doesn't listen, remember Camilla. And if you hold a position of power, if you're at the top, living beneath the spotlight, learn to look down the hallway, where the woman with the broom is listening more than you think. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched you, please share it. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep telling stories of those who are silent but never invisible.